the Displacement node, one of the most powerful tools in DaVinci Resolve Fusion, and one of the most misunderstood. It can warp reality, distort light, and breathe life into static images. But most people avoid it because it seems complicated. It doesn't have to be. In this tutorial, I'm breaking it down step by step. We're building two complete projects from scratch, a dynamic text effect, and a liquid glass day-to-night toggle. By the end, the Displacement node will be one of your most powerful creative tools. Let's get started. Okay, let's get started. Go over to the Effects panel and drag a new Fusion composition onto your timeline. Now switch over to the Fusion page. Let's bring in a background node and connect it to the Media Out node. I'm going to change the background to a gradient. Set the gradient type to radial, make the first color purple, and the second color black. Then drag this handle toward the center just like this. Next, bring in a Text Plus node and connect it to the background. Fusion will automatically create a merge node. In the text field, type Displace. I'm going to change the font to Impact, increase the font size, and move the text down slightly. Now go to the Shading tab. Select Element 3, enable the drop shadow, and lower the opacity just a little to give the text some depth. Press Shift plus Space and search for the Displace node. Place the Displace node between the Text Plus node and the Merge node. Now let's bring in an ellipse mask. We're going to use this ellipse as our displacement map. If I load it into the viewer, you'll notice it's made up of black and white values. The Displace node reads these brightness values to determine how much distortion to apply. Now connect the output of the ellipse mask to the green input of the Displace node. By default, Fusion will try to connect it to the blue mask input because it's a mask node, but the green input is where the Displace node expects its displacement map. As soon as I connect it, you can already see the text being distorted. If I increase the reflection strength, the displacement becomes much stronger. And if I increase the spread, the distortion becomes softer and spreads out over a larger area. Now watch what happens when I move the ellipse. As I drag it across the text, the displacement follows it. Anywhere the ellipse moves, the text is distorted. I'm going to reset the ellipse and make it a little smaller. Then I'll change the displace mode from radial to X and Y. Next, I'll increase the reflection strength and set the spread around 5. Right now, the text is being displaced, but we can't actually see what's causing the effect. So let's create a visible version of our ellipse. Bring in another background node and connect it to the existing merge. I'm going to change this background into a gradient. The first color will be purple. The second color will be this pink color. Then I'll add a maroon color in the middle. Now copy the ellipse mask and paste it as an instance by pressing Command-Shift-V. Connect the instanced ellipse to the new background node. Because it's an instance, any changes we make to the original ellipse will automatically update this one as well. Now we have a visible ball. If I move the original ellipse around, you can see the ball moving while it displaces the text at exactly the same time. Let's go back to the Displace node. I'll reduce the reflection strength to 0.2 and increase the spread to 6. Now we're ready to animate it. Go to frame 0, select the original ellipse mask, move it off screen and set a keyframe on the center control. Move to around frame 25 and bring the ball into the frame. Then move forward to around frame 65 and bring it back toward the left. Finally, move forward again and position it roughly in the middle. Now let's add a bounce. Move forward about 5 frames and lower the ball slightly. Advance another 7 or 8 frames and bring it back up. Then move forward a few more frames and lower it again. Continue alternating up and down while reducing the distance each time. Each bounce should become smaller than the last until the ball naturally settles into place. Now open the spline editor. This button lets you detach the spline panel, giving you a much larger workspace for editing your animation curves. Press Command A to select all the keyframes, then press S to smooth them. Close the spline editor. Now the animation feels much smoother and more natural. Next, select the Displaced node. Press Shift plus Space and add a Glow node. The glow gives the ball a soft, luminous appearance. I'll reduce the gain slightly so the effect isn't too intense. Before the glow node, let's add one more node. Go back to the Effects panel, then open the Templates folder. You'll find the Bevel node there. I'll leave a link to the Bevel node in the description since it's not included with DaVinci Resolve. The Bevel node gives our ball a subtle three-dimensional look. Simply increase the bevel level and adjust the width until you're happy with the result. Now let's move on to our second example. This time, we'll use the Displaced node to bring a still image to life. Add another Fusion composition and switch over to the Fusion page. Bring in a background node and connect it to the Media Out node. Next, open the media pool and import the image we'll be working with. I'll leave a link to all the media files used in this tutorial in the description below. Connect the image to the background node. Fusion will automatically create a merge node. Now scale the image until it fills the frame. I'll close the media pool to give us a little more room to work. Select the image, press Shift, Space, and add a Displaced node. We're going to use this to create subtle movement in the water, making the scene feel much more alive. Press Shift, Space again, and add a Fast Noise node. Connect the output of the fast noise to the green input of the Displaced node. Remember, the green input is where the Displaced node expects its displacement map. Let's load the fast noise into the viewer. The Displaced node reads the brightness values of this noise. The brighter the pixels, the stronger the displacement. Darker pixels produce less movement, while the gray values create a smooth transition between the two. If I increase the detail, raise the scale, and increase the seed rate, you can immediately see movement appearing in the image. The effect is a little too strong though. So I'll reduce the scale and lower the seed rate until the movement feels much more natural. Then I'll close the second viewer. At the moment, the entire image is moving. Instead, I only want the water to be affected. Add a polygon mask to the blue mask input of the fast noise. Now draw a mask around the water. Once you're finished, increase the soft edge to blend the movement naturally into the rest of the image. Now the displacement only affects the water. Let's also add some subtle movement to the trees and branches in the foreground. Add another polygon mask. Before drawing, delete the default polyline that Fusion creates. Now trace around the trees and branches. Once you're finished, increase the soft edge again. Now both the water and the foreground branches have gentle movement. It's a subtle effect, but it adds a surprising amount of life to a still image. I'll reduce the seed rate one last time to make everything even more believable. Now that our scene is alive, let's create the day to night transition. Bring in the second image. This is simply a nighttime version of the same scene. I created it using ChatGPT, and you'll find it along with the rest of the project files in the description. Now press Shift, Space, and add a Dissolve node. Disconnect the output of the Displaced node from the Merge node and connect it to the yellow input of the Dissolve node. Next, connect the nighttime image to the green input of the Dissolve node. Finally, connect the output of the Dissolve node back to the Merge. If I drag the Mix slider on the Dissolve node, you can see the image transition between the daytime and nighttime versions. This gives us a really clean way to animate the change. Go to around frame 50 and set a keyframe on the Mix control. Move forward to around frame 65 and change the mix value to complete the transition. Now play it back. The scene smoothly changes from day to night. Let's make that animation feel a little smoother. Open the spline editor, select the Dissolve animation, then smooth the curve. Now the transition eases in and out naturally instead of changing at a constant speed. Now let's create our liquid glass effect. First, drag a Merge node into the main node tree. Then, press Shift Space and add another Displaced node. This time, we'll use a rectangle mask as our displacement map. Connect the rectangle mask to the green input of the Displaced node. The green input supplies the displacement map, while the yellow input is the image that will actually be displaced. So, take the output of the Merge node in the main node tree and connect it to the yellow input of the Displaced node. Now, if I increase the reflection strength, you can see the image being distorted. The problem is that the entire image is being displaced, and that's not what we want. We only want the effect to occur inside the rectangle. To do that, reset the display settings. Now, connect the rectangle mask to the blue mask input of the same Merge node. Anything connected to the foreground input of that merge will now be limited to the area defined by the rectangle mask. Now, if I increase the reflection strength again, the distortion is only applied inside the rectangle. I'll reset everything, then I'll set the offset to -1 and lower the reflection strength to -4. Then increase the spread. And just like that, we have our liquid glass effect. I'm going to round the corners, adjust the proportions, and shape it into a simple toggle switch. If I zoom in and fine-tune the spread, light power, and light angle, the glass becomes much more convincing. Now that the glass is finished, let's build the toggle itself. Select the rectangle, the Merge, and the Displaced node we just created. Copy them and paste them to the side. Then reconnect the output of the previous Merge node to the new Displaced node. Now, adjust the width and height of the new rectangle so it becomes a smaller circular shape. And position it on the left side of the glass toggle. This will act as the movable knob that switches between day and night. To make the glass even softer, press Shift and Space and add a Gaussian blur node. Place the Gaussian blur node between the Displaced node and the Merge node. Reconnect the nodes if needed. Now the toggle has a much smoother glass effect. Next, let's add the icons. Import the sun icon and the moon icon from the media pool. Add a new Merge node and connect both icons to it. Then connect that Merge node to the output of the previous Merge and reconnect it back into the main flow. Add a Transform node to the moon icon. Resize it and move it to the right side of the toggle. Then add another Transform node to the sun icon. Scale it up slightly and move it to the left side. Now we have a complete toggle with both day and night icons. The only thing left is to animate the switch. Go to around frame 50 where the image transition begins. Select the rectangle that controls the toggle knob and set a keyframe on the center control. Move forward to around frame 65 and drag the knob to the right side of the toggle. Let's smooth that animation. Open the spline editor, select the toggle animation, and smooth the curve. This gives the movement a much more polished feel. Now let's add one final detail to make the widget feel more responsive. Instead of creating more keyframes, we're going to use Fusion's built-in Anim Curves modifier. Select the first rectangle mask that makes up the main body of the toggle. Right-click the Width control, choose Modify Width, and select Anim Curves. Now switch over to the Modifiers tab. Under Curve, change the mode to Easing. Then set the Out type to Elastic. This gives us a nice overshooting animation automatically without having to animate it by hand. Move to roughly the middle of the animation. Reduce the width slightly. Then change the time scale to around 5. Now if I play it back, you can see the toggle stretches slightly before settling into place. It's a subtle effect, but it adds a lot more personality to the animation. Let's do the same thing for the toggle knob. Select the rectangle that controls the knob. This time, right-click the Height control, choose Modify Width, and select Anim Curves. Go back to the Modifiers tab. Change the curve to Easing and set the Out type to Elastic, just like before. Finally, repeat the same process for the sun and moon icons. And that's it! I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more DaVinci Resolve Fusion tutorials, and I'll see you in the next one.